Hey everybody, my name is Ian. I work at the Fort Worth Public Library, and every second Saturday of the month, we do our Maker Showcase. This is where we highlight makers of all kinds, and today I have a very unique maker that I'm excited to talk to. I'd like to welcome MJ Kinman.
Hi, Ian. It's good to be here. I've been looking forward to this since we scheduled it. How many months ago? I can't remember, but a while.
It has been a while. It has been a while. I'm so happy to have you on here. As you know, quilting is a passion of mine personally. I'm a quilt maker. And so I'm so excited to have the chance to talk to you. And you have some really unique quilts and patterns and all sorts of things, but we're jumping a little ahead. So I'm going to let you kind of talk about what you do as a maker skill and talent.
Well, I appreciate that, Ian. And I know I asked you, what is your superpower? And you're like, I like quilts too. And I'm like, yeah, we share that. I love that. I am a quilter. A quilt maker. I consider myself an artist. I also create patterns. So I design patterns. I've written a book and I also teach. Before the world shut down, I was going all over the United States and Canada and meeting all of you wonderful quilt makers. And in fact, I was supposed to be in Fort Worth last summer, and we've rescheduled it for this summer. And hopefully, I'll be able to see you face to face instead of screen to screen. But now I teach online, and that's been just a wonderful, scary at first, but a really great adventure. But yeah, I'm the quilt maker who bakes the diamonds.
Yeah, your quilts are very unique because as a quilt maker, most of the time we work with blocks. We work with individual blocks that are usually square, sometimes round. There's a little variation around it. For those who don't know like much about quilting, a lot of times quilters will put blocks together. It's really easy to work with blocks because you can line up those blocks and make them fit into a quilt shape. But yours, they are a quilt shape, but I mean, behind you, you can see that it's very intricate. There's a lot to it. There's a lot going on, but it's amazing because it comes out looking like those gems and diamonds so spectacularly.
Well, I'm so glad you say that because when I first started doing this, I felt that I needed to put all of the edges of the gemstone in the quilt itself because I thought that's the only way people would recognize it as a gemstone. But if you think about it, this is the Elizabeth pattern that I have, and she's just a giant four patch. And for quilt makers, that's just four pieces of fabric put together. On this axis and this axis, you have one, two, three, four big blocks. So if I can just go back, because this was the
Yeah.
whole issue with me of looking at these gemstones. I've been a gem freak forever. I know nothing about the gem industry or gemology, but I had learned to quilt in 19 blah 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 87. So I was three. And my mom and I went with and learned how to cut all of our little pieces out. Right, you get your little piece of sandpaper on your cardboard, and then you cut it out with your little plastic templates. It was before rotary cutters came to Kentucky. And I loved it. It just grabbed my heart. I've always been a sewer, a sewist, and make my own clothes. I'm a terrible sewist, by the way, but I like to make my own clothes. And fabric, that tactile sense, just grabs my heart. So when I learned how to quilt, I knew I had found my thing. And then a couple years later, an image of a gemstone showed up on a flyer in my mailbox, and I was looking at it, and I thought, this is just straight lines. Why couldn't this become a quilt? And I knew there had to be a method to the madness. There had to be some structure to the chaos because all these lines were going everywhere and all the colors were going crazy. And of course, up to that point, Ian, all of the quilts I had made were made with maybe one, two, three, maybe four different shapes of templates. But with gemstones, they're all different sizes. Every single template would be a different size, it'd be a different color. How would I create templates to figure that out, right? What was the secret sauce for that? So, and then how do you make sense of the structure? So I remember I was living in a log cabin with my husband and our two dogs way back in 1996. And I just remember sitting at the dining room table and just staring at that gemstone. And all of a sudden, it clicked. I was able to see the different facets. It was a brilliant cut solitaire. And I saw that kite-shaped facet in the middle. Then I saw the little quadrilaterals balancing on top of that. And then it's surrounded by four other little pieces. And I realized that the secret is the faceting pattern. Those are your blocks. That's how you put these things together.
That's amazing. That it's really great when people have that aha moment, and it's just it's almost electric whenever it happens, and it's
Yes.
just it's so amazing. So that's
I mean,
really
it still
cool.
gets me excited when I think about it. I'm like, you just gasp and you're like, I got this. I think I got this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it sounds like your journey really started off with your mom, and your mom was a real inspiration for becoming a sewer, sewist. It's weird, sewer, sewist,
Yeah,
sewing, like it's a
yeah,
weird terminology, but can you talk a little bit more about that inspiration?
sure, sure. My mom and I just wanted to learn how to quilt. She's from the Mennonite faith tradition and has family members who came from Ohio to our home state of Nebraska as Amish, and they were conscientious objectors in the Amish faith. And of course, that's a big quilting tradition in the Amish and the Mennonite faith traditions. And so mom and I would just joke about the fact that we had it in our cultural DNA. And for me, I wanted to make quilts because I saw an Amish quilt on a wall. It was used as art, and that's what I wanted to do. I was a poor social worker for 100 years, and I lived in real dingy apartments, and I wanted to bring some life and some comfort and some color into my apartments. And so I thought that's the way to do it. And of course, that was my fiber, that was my medium. And so we would go to her friend. My mama was a visiting nurse, and her friend Gay was a fabulous appliquer. She wins. I don't understand. My brain does not do applique. I just, you guys, whoever you do that, are awesome. But she taught us how to cut out our templates, how to piece them together, how to match our points, how to put our bindings on, and I was hooked. And I went crazy. I knew that this was what I wanted to do.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Um, so obviously you were kind of brought up with this knowledge and these skills from an early age. Did you end up going to school and like do you have a degree in fiber arts or
No, 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 no. This is all the tragic result of way too much 4-H. I was a 4-H'er. I was a ginger snap in Hastings, Nebraska, and I took cooking and sewing. And the joke is the sewing took. But I loved everything about sewing, and so I just loved that sense. And my mom helped me with that. And then we learned how to quilt together back in the late '80s. And then no, I was a social worker for many years, and went into administration, and then made the leap into corporate America and became a project manager. And all the while, though, I was was making quilts, and I was doing the diamonds. From 1996 until 2014, I was doing the diamonds. And people are always saying, MJ, you need to do something with the diamonds. You need to do something with the diamonds. And I just didn't know what. So, Ian, I don't know. It's one of those other kinds of things that I share in my trunk shows about my journey. I was a project manager at a Fortune 100 company doing IT things. And you know what? When you think it's okay to make people cry in meetings, it's never okay to make people cry in meetings. And so I knew my soul had left the building, and I probably needed to as well. And I started thinking about what if I could do something with the diamonds and make it my full-time job. That had never entered my mind before, never. And I'd always wanted to be where I was in the corporate world, making the money, with the responsibility and the jobs, but I was miserable. I was completely miserable. And I can't explain it unless you have experienced it for yourself, where my heart and my head were saying, get out and get out now. Scariest thing I've ever done, because I've always had a job, and being without a job always meant disaster for me, but I had to get out. And so I quit my job.
wow.
And so I was, for about 2 years, I kind of piddled around and was getting involved in everybody else's projects, because that's what project managers do, right? They get involved in everybody else's projects. But then finally I realized I need to get my act together. So I engaged, I met a woman through one of these projects who became my coach. She had a trajectory that I was interested in following. And I said, Desiree, do you coach people? Just out of my mouth, and she said, well, yes, I do. And so I worked with her for 18 months, and she helped me kind of fine tune what I wanted to do. And she helped me get over the fear. I remember one time we had a conversation. I just burst into tears. I just sobbed. And she's like, what's going on? And I said, I'm so scared. What if they don't like me? What if they hate my stuff? What if they make fun of me? And she goes, okay, let's breathe. So she led me through some breathing exercises, and I just needed to get that out. You just need to get that fear out. And I talk about joy and fear, and how we all have fear, and it makes us human, but it's important for us to say no to fear and yes to joy. Choose joy anyway. So that was what I did. I decided to choose the joy, as scary as it was. And I think that's when, I don't want to get too woo-woo on us, but I think that's when the universe says, finally, now I can work with you. Now you're not pushing against me. I'm going to work with you on this. So that was in 2014. I finally started getting things together in about 2016, 2017. And about 2018, I went to my first quilt market and quilt festival, and it's been a real fun ride ever since.
Yeah, man. Wow. What an amazing story. And I like, that seems to be a recurring theme that I talk about here in the Maker Showcase. Is it's almost that that universe telling you like where you need to be, and how, it tells you when you're in the right place. So it's,
I'm sorry.
no,
I'm
go
sorry
ahead.
for interrupting you.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm so rude.
Yep.
Just to, on that point, I agree with you 100%. And so many people have that experience. I can't tell you how many times in my trunk shows when we were doing it in person, people come up to me with tears in their eyes saying, thank you. Like this big burly guy, was that one of my, and he came up and he was just, his eyes were glistening, and he's like, it really meant a lot to me. So if my little story can help people move forward and start chasing their passion and their dream, man, that's what I want to do. I want to quilt, but I also want to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so important to realize, yes, a job is a safe place. You have that income, you have a lot of things that you need, but it's that soul that you have to be able to make happy. You have to make yourself happy. So I'm really interested. You talked a little bit about the inspiration for your first gem quilt, but you have a wide selection of gems and diamonds. Where do you get all this inspiration from?
Oh, just, when I first started doing this, I was trying to find images on the internet. And again, keep in mind, it was 1996. I lived in a log cabin with dial-up. So I would find an image that I liked, and there weren't that many, right? It was the very beginning of the internet. The content, was beginning to just develop. And so I'd find a picture of a gemstone that I liked, and I'd click download, and I'd go make dinner. And it would take hours. But now, truly, you can get online, you can Google diamonds or loose diamonds or pear-shaped diamonds or amethysts, etc., and you can go down a rabbit hole for hours. And I have done that. So yes, internet is good. One of the sites that I would suggest is the Smithsonian Institute site. They have their mineral and gem department. That's going to be the basis for my next series of art quilts. In fact, that right there is one of the charts for my next piece. Also, GIA, the Gemological Institute of America.edu, GIA.edu. It's the preeminent source of gemological education in the world, and they're fabulous. But the other thing I love to do, Ian, books.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that. And I've got them all, you can tell what I love here. Look at this. That is actually a book called Tiffany Diamonds, and it's a lot of history and it's a lot of pretty pictures. Here's Tiffany colored gems.
Wow.
Isn't that fun? Again, I've got it earmarked.
Amazing.
Look at this. This is the gems of Marjorie Merriweather Post. She is the woman who built Mar-a-Lago, and we know Mar-a-Lago is in the news these days, but she actually built that beautiful place. She is the daughter of the guy who started the Post cereal company, so Post Toast and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the Smithsonian, and here's the National Gem Collection. And I'm going to start bringing it up. And then this is I like. It's Famous Diamonds by Ian Balfour. And look, my dog's got a hold of it.
Oh no.
But I'm doing a project this year all about famous people and the gems that they own, or famous gems and the people who were attracted to them over the course of maybe centuries. And so I love this for research. I'm kind of a research geek, which is why I'm excited about talking with you, because you're part of a library. Libraries have always been a huge part of my growing up time and my adult life as well. So yeah, that's where I get my inspiration.
Go figure books. It's
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah.
right?
I thought that would make sense. You know,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And there are so many amazing gems and minerals out there that have such unique stories. And I know in one of our Learn, Dream, Do segments that we have here at the library, I talked about the Hope Diamond and how interesting the Hope Diamond is. Is there something coming out with the Hope Diamond?
Yes, actually, there is. My next series, as I mentioned, is the Smithsonian, and the Hope lives in the Smithsonian Institute right now. She's not going to be the first one that I do because there are so many other gemstones that are, I think, equally as beautiful, even more interesting, and equally beautiful. I
That's so
just think
cool.
so. There's a whole group there. So yes, in fact, this is a mock-up of the a piece that I'm going to do for the Victoria Transvaal, which is a giant cognac-shaped, pear-shaped. It's not that big. It's about that big, and so it's big for a diamond. So
Yeah.
the Hope Diamond has a great story, and again, my new block of the month is called Diamonds and Drama Queens, and the person who owned the Hope Diamond, we could dedicate 3 or 4 months to Evelyn McLean Walsh. She was wacko. She was wild. She was just a wild, eccentric, outrageous woman, and had too much money, more money than sense. Okay, so she ended up buying the Hope Diamond from a guy by the name of Pierre Cartier. You know, the Cartier company. Pierre Cartier had bought this big, beautiful blue gem, which didn't exactly have a lot of bling, like a lot of people expected diamonds to. And he couldn't get rid of it. He'd spent a fortune on it and he couldn't sell it. So what he ended up doing was making the whole story up about the curse of the Hope Diamond. People think, oh, this happened and that happened, and there were wars and there were people die. He made it all up. It was all marketing. So,
That's
but she bought
amazing.
it. she was like, oh, so she bought the legend and played it to her advantage, and she was just, there's a couple of stories about her, whether they're true or not, but they are legends, where she and her husband Ned would throw gigantic parties. They were kind of part of that whole 1920s jazz age set. And she would take the Hope Diamond necklace and put it around the neck of her Great Dane and let him roam through the guests at the party. There, she would so when she needed to make a mortgage payment on one of her mansions, she kept her gemstones rumored in the back of an overstuffed chair. And when she needed to make a mortgage payment, she would go in, rip out the back of the chair, take the Hope Diamond, stuff it down her bra, and trot off to the pawn shop. One last story. She would, there was one story where it was rumored that right before a party, guests spotted her at the top of her grand staircase wearing the Hope Diamond and nothing else.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Oh my.
yeah, yeah.
Goodness gracious. That sounds like she was an interesting person to say the least.
She was, the most interesting and the most beautiful gemstones do attract to them the
Mhm.
most outrageous people and the stories. And I love that part of it. So,
That's amazing. So, for someone who is interested in quilting and doesn't know where to begin,
oh,
obviously, they don't need to start by buying every single tool and every single thing out there. What advice do you have, and what suggestions would you have for someone who wants to just get started?
sure, sure. I'm so glad you asked that because we have gone through in the last year a whole revolution of getting access to great classes online. Not, I think we're slowly going to start opening up, and there's a lot of classes you can take individually. But now you can take classes, drip classes, meaning you can take it on your own time, or there are live classes. And the thing I love about making quilts is there is a style for everybody. There's traditional quilts, modern quilts, art quilts. You can do landscapes, portraits, florals, abstracts. There's all kinds of techniques. The technique I use is called freezer paper piecing technique. It's not single foundation. You don't have to, you don't sew to paper. You're just using freezer paper as your template. You're cutting out a 1/4 inch seam allowance around it, putting these two together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you can put two pieces of fabric together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you can do these. You can absolutely do these. So what I would suggest is get online. There's a brand new organization out there called the Global Quilt Connection. It's a nonprofit, uh, and they have gathered some of the very best quilt makers and teachers online, and you can see what they're teaching, what kinds of classes, whether they're, classes you can sign up for and take whenever you want, or if they're live classes, it runs the gamut. And so I would start there, the Global Quilt Connection, and just sign up for some classes and dive in. Just start. Um, just yeah, and maybe begin looking to see what kind of quilts you like, and going, I think I want to do that. I think I want, like, for me, I was like, I want to do Amish quilts. That's what hooked me. So find what you like and then dive in. If they're gems, I'm happy to share with you everything I know about making gemstones.
Yeah, we've had such, it's been a weird time, obviously, for the past year or so. It's
Yeah.
been a weird time with COVID-19, but it's also been, finding that silver lining, and so many more classes are available online, like you said. And I took a class last summer online, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about taking a class online. It's for me, it's better to learn in person, but I was amazed with how wonderful it was. And of course, it does, a good teacher makes all the difference in the world, but it really does help to have online classes where you can take them at your own pace and your own time. It really helps out a lot. So that's a
And a
great
lot of
advice.
classes, Ian, have private Facebook pages now attached to them, and they have support from the instructor. So if you have questions, they often have email support and things like that. So,
Yeah.
uh,
It's so great to have those resources. And I think I'm hopeful, I'm crossing my fingers and hopeful that this is, even after things start to go back to that new normal, and we hopefully will be able to return to in person and all that. I hope that online kind of still stays there as a resource that people have available.
I think it will, and this is why. I think students really like it because when you're in a class with a teacher, it's sometimes hard to see the technique. But when you have online and that teacher, that instructor has their camera right over his or her hands, and you can see it and you can replay it as much as you want. If it's one of those, go as you go on your own things. And you can also hear. A lot of times people can't hear, or they they're doing something else and the teacher says something critical and they've missed it. And so I think people are liking it, and honestly I like it too, because my quilts are really heavy, and when I'm schlepping through the airport with those quilts on the trunk shows, I love being in person with people. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but I need to start lifting weights. To get
they can get
stronger.
they can get heavy real quick. I mean, I've made several quilts, and just trying to transport them from one place to another, it becomes a task in itself.
Yeah, one of my gemstones, it's part of my Bourbon Diamond series. The last series that I did is called Bourbon Diamonds. Why not, right? I'm in Kentucky, and as artists, it's our job, I think, to get our work out into the world. And if you can get a little hook or a little something that gets people's attention, there's nothing to be ashamed about that. But one of them is Old Pogue bourbon, inspired by Old Pogue Distillery, which is up in Maysville, Kentucky. And it's a big aquamarine. It's about 6 feet by 6 feet. It's big aquamarine and a citrine on top of an aquamarine. Lots of oranges and blues. And I thought I was being really smart by putting a big, thick, rusty orange velvet on the back of it, because I wanted it to hang very flat. Well, it does, but it also weighs a ton. When
My
people are
goodness.
taking around it before the world shut down, and they would hold the quilt and they would take it around the rooms for trunk shows, they're like, "This is so heavy," and I'm like, "Just keep going." They're like, "Oh no!" So
Oh my goodness.
you got to be careful about some of the materials you use. But I like the way it turned out. I just don't like to transport it.
Sure. That's very understandable. Absolutely. MJ, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Where can people find you online?
Okay, they just go to mjkinman.com.
Awesome.
mjkinman.com. I'm also, that's my website. And I also, you can see my gem quilts there in the gallery, plus then the patterns and that kind of thing. And I have a little online shop. And then I'm also on Facebook at MJ Kinman Textile Artist. And I'm also on Instagram at MJ Kinman Textile Artist.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope everybody checks out your amazing work. And hopefully, we've inspired a new generation of quilters as well.
And next time we talk, we're going to be face to face, and we're going to do a show and tell. I want to see your quilts.
That sounds amazing. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. See you,
Thanks.
everybody.